Okay, so you handed me this stack of articles about Sean Diddy Combs, and man, this is heavy stuff. We're talking accusations going back decades, everything from sexual assault to like financial misdeeds. And you know our listeners, they want the real deal, right?
Absolutely.
No hype, no spin, just the truth.
Yeah.
So that's what this deep dive is all about. We're going deep into these legal battles, the accusations themselves, and trying to figure out like what this means for Diddy and his whole empire.
It's a lot to unpack. The sheer volume of accusations alone is, well, it's a lot. And it really makes you think about the whole system, you know, the music industry, the power dynamics at play. It's
a lot to take in, for sure. Where do we even begin with all of this?
A timeline is really helpful, I think, because when you lay it all out chronologically, it starts to paint a pretty clear picture of what we're dealing with.
Okay, so let's start with that then, the timeline. Take us back to the beginning.
All right, so we need to rewind all the way back to the early 1990s when Diddy was first making a name for himself with Bad Boy Records. So think like 1990, 1991. Okay.
2 women filed lawsuits alleging they were raped. One of them said she met Diddy at like an industry event for MCA Records, and the other one claimed she was a college student at the time.
So these early accusations, they involve women who encounter Diddy in totally different settings.
Exactly. And there's another layer to these early cases. They were both filed just before the statute of limitations expired.
Oh, wow.
Now, just so everyone's on the same page, the statute of limitations is basically a law that sets a deadline for filing certain lawsuits.
Right.
In these cases, a temporary New York law actually gave these women a bit more time, and they used it, which might suggest that, you know, maybe they didn't feel comfortable or safe coming forward for all those years, potentially afraid of, you know, Diddy's power and influence.
Yeah, makes you think about what they might have been going through during that time. Okay, so what happens after these first 2 lawsuits?
We fast forward to 1995, another lawsuit pops up. This time, it's from a woman who said she met Diddy at a party. This one was for Biggie Smalls. Biggie, another huge name in the hip-hop world.
Yeah, and her accusations are serious. She claims he, like, slammed her head into a wall, raped her, and then threatened her to stay quiet.
God, that's a really disturbing accusation.
It is.
And it feels like there's a pattern maybe starting to emerge here.
You're right to point that out. Think about it. All of these accusers say they met Diddy at industry events.
Right.
And then look at the alleged behavior. Using his position, using force, and those threats to keep them quiet. These details, they're unfortunately going to come up again and again as we go through this.
God, it's just awful to like even imagine this happening and to think it might have already been going on for years at this point.
And it doesn't stop there. In 1998, a man came forward alleging that he was fondled by Diddy at one of his parties, and get this, he was only 16 years old at the time.
He was just a teenager. Like, where was this party even? Were there other people around?
This party was one of Diddy's infamous white parties. You know, those ones where everyone has to wear all white?
Right.
These parties were known for attracting some big names in the music industry. And, well, they become a recurring location in several of these accusations.
These white parties, they seem like, if these accusations are true, they were almost like Diddy's, I don't know, hunting ground.
It's definitely a recurring theme. A lot of the accusers mention these parties.
Right.
And sadly, these accusations, they don't end there. In 2001, another woman comes forward. She says she was drugged and raped by Diddy and another individual.
Okay.
Then, just a couple of years later, in 2003, 2 more women came forward with similar stories.
2 more.
Yeah, one was a model, and both of them claimed they were drugged and assaulted.
This drugging thing, it's really scary. Like, it seems like more than just a coincidence at this point, you know?
Absolutely. That detail, it's consistent across multiple accusations, which is really concerning.
Yeah.
Like, it could point to a pattern of behavior, a way to incapacitate these women to...
Awful to think about.
It is.
So it sounds like we're seeing this pattern of alleged behavior at these parties, and then there are these accusations of drugging.
Right, and it continues. In 2004, another woman, she remains unnamed, but she claimed that Diddy, he threatened her and a friend, forced them to take drugs and alcohol, and then raped her.
The threats, the alleged threats, it just adds a whole other layer to all of this.
Yeah.
It's like it wasn't enough to just allegedly, you know, assault these individuals, but then to threaten them on top of that.
Yep.
To have that much power over someone.
It speaks to a need for control, possibly. And we see hints of this alleged intimidation again in 2008 when a man, He worked in fashion. He accused Diddy and two of his bodyguards of assaulting him.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
Where? Where did this happen?
In a Macy's stockroom.
A Macy's? Are you serious? Like in the middle of a store?
That's what he claims, yeah.
That's insane. That could have happened anywhere, and it had to be there. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've been going through these allegations chronologically, and it's a lot.
It is.
But there's one incident that stands out because it doesn't just rely on accusations.
Yeah.
Right? There's actual footage.
You're talking about the leaked surveillance video from 2016.
Yes. With Cassie Ventura.
Right.
His ex-girlfriend.
Right.
That footage was shocking. I mean, for people who haven't seen it, what exactly happened?
Well, the video shows Diddy, he's grabbing Cassie Ventura, dragging her, actually kicking her at one point. All this is in a hotel hallway.
Right.
It's hard to watch, to be honest.
It's brutal. And Diddy did apologize publicly afterward.
He did.
Calling his behavior disgusting and blaming like a dark time in his life.
Right.
But it felt like too little too late for a lot of people.
Yeah, apologies, they can be tricky,
Ah.
especially in these situations. It's hard to strike that balance between taking responsibility and, admitting guilt. And honestly, a lot of times these public apologies, they're carefully crafted by legal teams for damage control.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so we have the video with Cassie Ventura. And the accusations, they don't stop there. In 2018, a woman sued Diddy for allegedly arranging for her to be gang raped.
Oh, wow.
She claimed it was retaliation for accusing him of being involved in Tupac's death.
That is a very serious accusation.
Extremely serious and incredibly disturbing to even think about. And then things seem to, really escalate from there. Right?
They do. In 2021, another man came forward. He accused Diddy of drugging and sexually assaulting him at one of his parties.
Another white party.
It's not clear if it was one of those parties, but
Okay.
the details are similar to previous accusations.
Right.
And then 2024, that's when everything really seemed to explode. We saw this huge wave of new lawsuits filed against Diddy, and these lawsuits, they contain some of the most serious accusations yet.
Like what? What are we talking about here?
We're talking accusations of rape, of sexual abuse of minors at those white parties. There are even allegations of human trafficking.
This is a lot to process.
It is.
I mean, it really paints a very different picture of the man who calls himself Love.
It's important to remember, though, as serious as these accusations are, they are still just accusations at this point, right?
Right, of course.
Diddy has denied all of them, and his legal team has been, they've been pretty aggressive in his defense.
Okay, so let's talk about Diddy's side of this then. What are his lawyers even saying about all of this?
They're using some pretty standard legal strategies, nothing unusual in these high-profile cases, blanket denials, questioning the motives of the accusers, pointing out what they claim are inconsistencies in their stories.
Right.
They're also arguing that Diddy's an easy target for these lawsuits because he's Diddy, he's rich, he's famous, he's an easy target.
So they're saying he's being targeted because of his wealth and his fame.
That's a big part of their defense, yeah. But there's another part of their strategy that I find really interesting. The language they're using. They're not holding back. They're using strong words, like really strong words. They're calling the accusations baseless, money grabs, even going so far as to call them sickening.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think that's deliberate.
You do.
By using such charged language, they're trying to control the narrative, you know? They're trying to frame Diddy as the victim of some kind of conspiracy, and that could have an impact on a jury if any of these cases actually go to trial.
It's all about perception.
Yeah.
Right? It makes you think about the power dynamics at play in these situations, right? I mean, you have Diddy on one side, a global icon, tons of money, a team of high-powered lawyers, and then on the other side, you have these individuals, many of whom were, relatively unknown. It feels like that classic David and Goliath story.
It does, doesn't it? And this whole case, it just highlights something we see all the time, not just in the music industry, but in society as a whole.
Yeah.
People in positions of power, they often hold all the cards.
Absolutely. And it feels like we've seen this story play out so many times before. Powerful people accused of terrible things, and often it takes years for those accusations to surface, if they ever do. Why do you think that is?
It's not easy for people to come forward, especially when you're talking about someone as powerful as Diddy. There's fear, there's the pressure of potential backlash, the fear of not being believed.
And then there's the court of public opinion to deal with. Social media can be brutal.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for us to remember, as we're talking about all of this, that these are real people with real lives, real families. To come forward with these accusations takes incredible strength and courage.
You mentioned the impact of all this, and we do have to talk about this new docuseries that 50 Cent is producing. I mean, he's never been shy about criticizing Diddy, and now he's teaming up with Netflix to do a deep dive into these allegations.
Yeah.
What do you think 50's goal is with this series?
50 Cent has always been very outspoken, and it seems like he feels like this is a story that needs to be told. He said the docuseries will look into the accusations themselves, but also the culture of the music industry, the impact all of this has had on everyone involved.
It's going to be huge. It's going to be on Netflix. Everyone's going to see it. Do you think it has the power to actually change things, though? I mean, the music industry is the music industry, right?
It has the potential. With a platform like Netflix, this isn't just some niche documentary, you know? This is going to reach a global audience.
True.
It could be a watershed moment.
Wow, so
It could inspire more people to come forward to share their own stories. It could force the industry to finally confront these issues head on, to start taking these accusations seriously.
it sounds like we're on the verge of a reckoning, not just for Diddy, but for the whole music industry.
It certainly feels that way. It's time for these conversations to happen. It's time to take a long, hard look at the systems in place and ask ourselves, like, why? Why is this still happening?
It's a lot to unpack. We've gone from a stack of articles to a deep dive into power, accountability, and the dark side of the music industry. So what do you think, listener? Did any of this change your view of Diddy? Does it change how you view the music industry as a whole? We've given you the information, but ultimately the conclusions, those are yours to make.